Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Bishwajit Ghosh, Professor of Sociology from the University of Bardhaman. I am also the coordinator of this paper called Social Movement. This is the first introductory module. Its title is Introduction to Issues and Concepts of Social Movements. In this module, I will be basically talking about the issues and the concepts that are normally to be known to all students studying social movements, and also would introduce you the contradictions and controversies particularly related to the issues of social movement. Now let me first contextualize why at all we are talking about social movement. Often it is argued that social movements are exceptional phenomena. Exceptional because they challenge many of the established institutional arrangements and practices in the society. Often they also propagate for changes in the established order. So obviously they are argued to be very powerful but short-lived and episodic. But sociologically such a characterization is not correct. This is because they should not be seen as exceptional events. They are a very part of everyday life and everyday discourse for many of us. For Turin, one of the experts on social movement, these movements lie permanently at the heart of social life, because social life cannot be imagined without any kind of protest activity, whether it is for something a better day or it is protest against a change that is already being introduced. So obviously they are parts of social progression. As we desire for more better living, more progress, a kind of better way of life, social movements become a part and parcel of our daily life. They also bring messages for change as the prophet of the present. So as a kind of leadership, as a prophet, they show us the way to go ahead and argue for a particular set of belief, practices and institutions. Obviously, social movements point towards social anomalies. Wherever there is anomaly in social aspect, in cultural aspect, in ideological aspect, social movements rise to argue for change and transformation in society. They also speak for justice, equality and fraternity. Obviously, you would agree with me that social movements are very much required for a just living, for a social living, and there cannot be any society without social movement. Now, there are large varieties of collective initiatives, actions and interventions which are often argued to be social movements, and they are also manifested in diverse shape. Obviously, the point that I am making is that we define social movement and characterize social movements from several points of view. We use terms like collective mobilization, collective action, protest to refer to social movements, but they differ from each other. There are certainly certain commonalities between different social movements because they protest, they argue for justice, as I have already told you, but the structure of the movement, the leadership quality, the way they progress, they differ from one phase to the another. Even a single movement differs from one phase to the other phase. Let me now discuss the concept of social movement itself. How would we define social movement? Obviously, social movements are organized or collective effort. They aim to bring in changes in our thought, beliefs, values, attitudes, relationships and major institutions in society, or to resist any change in the above societal arrangements. That means what is going on is resisted. On the other hand, if some new thing is being proposed, that also could be resisted. There are plenty of instances from the world where people have objected to new thing. For instance, economic globalization. There are many people who have protested against economic globalization. On the other hand, there are people who are arguing for withdrawal of some order being passed by the government. There are also movements which are arguing for a better kind of life. That means they are objecting to the current state of affair. Bloomer has defined social movements as collective enterprises to establish a new social order of life. That means one of the basic objectives of social movement is to establish something new. Social movements are also defined as an effort by a large number of people to solve collectively a problem that they feel they have in common. That means there is collectivity involved in any kind of social movement, and collectively people feel that they have some problem in common, so they organize themselves into a platform and go ahead with the movement. So we may define a social movement as an organized endeavor to bring about or to resist large scale changes in the social order by non-institutionalized or institutionalized means. That means the goal is to change something, goal is to initiate something, goal is to object to something. The means might differ, it could be institutionalized, it could be non-institutionalized. Let me now talk about vital elements of social movements. There are 6 to 7 types of vital elements. I will be explaining each of them to you one by one. But let me first of all give a list of these vital elements. All social movements have organization. This is very vital. Then it has leadership. Obviously, social movements cannot proliferate unless and until there is ideology, which is also an important part and element of social movement. Collective mobilization is required for any social movement to stand on its feet. Interest articulation is also required, because unless and until interests are articulated, how would collective mobilization take place? Finally, identity formation, because once you articulate your interest, once you start mobilizing collectively, obviously you are giving rise to identity. Let me now discuss each of these elements. First of all, organization and leadership. These are closely linked because leadership, a kind of leadership builds up an organization, and organization leaders relies on leadership support. A leader could be a charismatic figure or a democratically elected one, and the organization provides an identified structure to social movement. Unless and until you have an organized body, a kind of leadership, you cannot move ahead. The next issue is ideology. Ideology provides a broad frame of action and collective mobilization in the social movement. It also provides legitimacy to the process of interest articulation and organized collective action. However, in the context of new social movements, role of ideology has been a subject of close scrutiny. Now, we often distinguish between old social movements and new social movements, and there is a distinctive module to discuss about the differences between these. I will be requesting you to read that module to go through the details of the differences between new and old social movements. This is not the objective of this module, so we are skipping this portion. So after ideology comes collective mobilization. Unless and until there is collectivity and it is mobilized, that collective body is mobilized, there cannot be any movement, obviously. A single person cannot shout on the street and say it is a movement. We normally do not consider it a movement unless and until some people gather together, right? More than say some persons. The number cannot be fixed. But often it is a huge number, more than lakhs, often, right? So it is a central element of movement, because if you have large number of people coming together, that means the strength of the movement is very good enough. The nature and direction of a social movement, interestingly, depends on that kind of strength. If you have much larger base, you can continue for many number of days. Often the steps that a particular movement takes, for instance, it may be radical, it may be non-institutionalized, it may be spontaneous, it could be non-violent, and so on and so forth. They all rely on this collective mobilization strategy. But it should be recognized that all movements undergo processes of transformation. So the way collective mobilization takes place, there could be some changes in the process, they mobilize themselves. Then the question of interest articulation. Those who were joining the mobilization, they must articulate their interest in such a fashion that they feel that they are a part of the movement. Unless and until that kind of emotional attachment to the movement takes place, a movement would rather break down in middle. So it is an important aspect of social movement, and it is usually done by the leadership and the organization. It is one of the basic responsibility of the leaders to make people aware of their interest. And in fact, you have probably, if you listen to the lectures of many of the leaders of social movement, they are basically they basically try to articulate the interest of a member so that they become united and they could identify their interest. Finally, common identity. If members start articulating their interest, they also start developing their common identity. They start feeling that they are a part of this movement, and the brothers and sisters who are there with them, they have the common agenda. So social movements can form solidarity only if they are able to construct a common identity. Now, common identity may be diverted also against the enemy. For instance, in any social movement, enemy is identified, either it is the state or any capitalistic agent or any other agency, right, doing something. So unless and until common identity is formed against the common enemy, that movement cannot gather strength. So an identity is often used to not only gather strength but also give a shape to its own nature of the social movement. Let me now talk about the way social movements have originated in the world. There are several schools of thought on the origin of social movement. As per the classical model, social movement is a response to basically 4 factors. One is structural strain, the second is status inconsistency, the third is relative deprivation, and finally cultural revitalization. I will be talking about each of these in some detail. Let me begin with the issue of structural strain. Now, obviously, social movement is the result of structural weakness due to the strain in society, leading to psychological disturbances. Wherever there are structural reasons, something has fallen down, something is not being done, or misunderstanding, some inequality or injustice being done to certain people. The structure is rather unequal. So in that kind of situation, people start feeling a sort of deprivation, a psychological pressure, a strain, right? So they do not often aim to change the political structure, but they basically aim to resist the kind of strain that is there in a particular situation. There are, however, a variety of reasons behind structural strains. There could be economic reasons, there could be social reasons, there could be cultural reasons too. There is a theory proposed by Kornhauser, and the title of this theory is mass society. This mass society theorists, they argue that due to lack of an intermediate structure, when the intermediate structure lacks, people in the mass society, they start integrating themselves. That means due to lack of a structure, people gets alienated and tensions develop. Ultimately, a social protest takes place. Let me now go back, discuss the second point, that is status inconsistency argument. Proponents of this theory, like Broom and Lenski, they are of the view that the objective of objective discrepancy between persons' ranking and status generates subjective tensions in the society, leading to cognitive dissonance, discontent, and protest. That means there is inconsistency between subjective tension and objective understanding. So when there is a discrepancy between my ranking and the status being given to it, there could be some social movement. But again, it is to be noted down that social movements are collective endeavor. So a whole group of people, if they feel there is a status inconsistency between whatever is given and whatever is desirable, then there could be some sort of movement. You could identify Dalit movement as a kind of protest movement against status inconsistency. Finally, thirdly, the argument of relative deprivation, which is very important, is one of the prominent explanations of social movement in social sciences. Now, Marxians too argue that economic deprivation is very much important as the prime cause of all social conflict. To the non-Marxist, however, there are non-material reasons and factors which are more important or relatively important for arousing or mobilizing people. This could be status, this could be behavior, this could be other kinds of thing. Now, relative deprivation, which means that there is a discrepancy between legitimate expectation and reality. That means my expectation is X and the reality is Y. Then actually a movement may come. Many of the movements led by middle class are in fact the results of relative deprivation. They feel they are being relatively deprived in a particular context. Tribals might also think that they are relatively deprived because the other people are getting it, and they, since they live in a hill regions, they are not getting it. So when there is a relative comparison being done between two sets of people, deprivation may come in. The final issue is cultural revitalization. Wallace is of the view that social movements are manifested out of a deliberate, organized and conscious action of the members of a society to construct a more satisfying culture for themselves. That means I am not satisfied with the kind of culture that is there, so I need to revitalize the culture. Often many of the movements which argue for bring back the tradition stress on that kind of revitalization. Often we see that people argue that the old days have gone and the culture has been destroyed and so on and so forth. So bring back that old culture. We are satisfied with the old culture. So arguments for tribalization, arguments for Islamization, arguments for Hinduization, these are all cultural revitalization movements. But these movements go through different phases. Wallace he has argued that they move from cultural stability to increased individual stress, from cultural distortion and disillusionment to cultural revitalization. That means these movements could take different shapes in different phases of time. So based on these four kinds of arguments, we may now argue that no element of strait and deprivation can alone produce a movement unless there is a subjective perception about the objective condition of deprivation. That means members have to perceive discrimination. Unless and until the idea of discrimination goes into the consciousness of the collectivity, people start feeling that they are deprived, a kind of subjective condition, then probably unless and until that human agency comes into factor, social movements do not become a reality. So ideology is important, organization is important, leadership is important in making a reality for the social movement, because these are the three main things which make possible a kind of transformation. Now let me go back to the issue of transformation of social movement, how actually transformations take place. Obviously all social movements, they have a life history, and obviously they undergo a process of transformation, because initially maybe there are certain demands, but at the middle phase, maybe with more and more people joining, with the more strength being gathered by a particular movement, demands might change. The kind of strategy followed initially might be peaceful, but later on again it could take a shape. So this transformation is very much vital for any kind of social movement. Often changes in the leadership, right, of a particular movement, it may also initiate changes in that social movement. So such transformation is contextual and society specific. Contextual in the sense that many of the transformation depends on the particular context. Maybe for instance, Maoists now are operating from the hinterlands, jungles. That was the context. That is the context, and it is arised because when they were operating in cities and rural areas during 60s and 70s, state action in fact forced them to leave that places. There was too much of killing of the Naxalites during 60s and 70s, so they were forced to go to a plan, tribal hinterland where probably security force cannot enter. So the way strategy takes place in a particular context, a social movement also changes its color. Now we can also discuss the direction that this transformation takes place. Now it could be from a revolutionary movement to a quasi movement. That means initially you might argue for total change, right? You want the whole caste system to change, but then since you find that you cannot change the whole caste system, then you are arguing for only a part of it. Dalit movement initially, when Ambedkar was arguing, he was arguing for a holistic kind of system. Let us do away with any elite caste. That was the slogan he gave. but then he went for reservation within the caste system. So that kind of strategy, a movement may take place that you begin with a whole or much larger goal, but end up or follow a much smaller goal to achieve, because in a context you cannot pursue that. Transformation may also be from radical movements to collective mobilization. It could be radical, it could be based on very armed struggle, or the slogans taken as very radical. But then it could become a sort of democratic movement, collectively people are mobilizing, and radical ideology is giving rise to reformative kind of movement. So a radical movement may become a reformative movement. It is initially radical in the sense that it might ask people to radically alter, but at the other moment it might ask people to reform only. Reform is changes within a system, and radical change means totally change the system. So, one can argue for different kinds of strategies that social movements may follow. But one should not think that these radical and non-radical aspects of social movements, they are in conflict. They are in fact complementary. So there is complementarity between radical and institutionalized movements. Collective mobilization and institutionalization, in fact they are not contradictory, they are complementary to each other. That proves the way for persistent and renewed efforts towards a just society. The process of mobilization and institutionalization do coexist. Many a time, many of the Maoists who believe in armed struggle, they argue to the civil society to have some sort of logic. And the intellectuals often go to court to argue for the rights of the tribals. So different kinds of strategies might be followed by the same kind of movement. These are not contradictory. Institutionalization also provides new possibilities. When you institutionalize, it gives you new possibility of mobilization, and that mobilization is not displaced by institutionalization, but goes hand in hand to a large extent. So you may argue that institutionalized and non-institutionalized movements are not contradictory, rather they are complementary. Let me now pick up the issue of perspectives on social movement. There are many perspectives. I would begin with the traditional perspectives first and go on to discuss the modern perspectives. The Marxists are the first to reduce all varieties of collective mobilization and social movement to class conflicts. For them, workers unite because they have to fight class exploitation. So class struggle is a reality for many of the Marxists, and obviously this is actually the very tenets of Marxian social movement. But the functionalist would argue from a different perspective and would say that social movements are in fact potential agency of disruptions of the social order. As functionalists are very much they like social order, equilibrium. So any kind of movement, they would argue, it would break that social order, it would create disequilibrium in that social order. But the collective behavior perspective, they have viewed social movements as non-institutionalized collective actions, which are not guided by existing social norms, and they are formed to meet unified or unstructured situations, and are understood in terms of a breakdown either in the organs of social control or normative integration due to structural changes. So collective behavior theorists, they argue about non-institutionalized means and breakdown of norms in order to argue for a particular kind of movement. Now if you look into the contemporary perspective, which are recently being argued, you would find a completely different sets of arguments being put forward. One major argument, one major theory is resource mobilization theory. It originated in North America, and the theorists, they studied social movements as a political process of institutionalized protest or collective actions to get the share of political power by using various resources. Obviously, when social movements become a part of political process, the leadership and its members, they try to share power, and movement becomes the goal of a movement, becomes the basic objective becomes sharing of power. Now these theory explain the occurrences of popular protest in terms of the emergence of political opportunities in a democratic society. In the contemporary life, there are political opportunities thrown up by the democratic system. There are welfare activities taken by the government of all governments. There is parliamentary politics in existence. So obviously all these give legitimacy to the culture of petitions, demonstrations, strikes, mass meetings, and so on and so forth. So according to resource mobilization theory, these democratic processes has created a space for movements to take place. Obviously, people pursue their common interest. Given a kind of changes in the social and political life, people are now able to pursue their common interest more rationally and direct their collective mobilization through participation and human action. Similarly, it has been argued that when resources are pumped into the society, resources, economic resources, social resources, often knowledge is a resource. For instance, internet itself is a resource. Now, when resources are available, you use that resource in order to respond to counter movement, right? So it is a kind of political entrepreneurship, that you utilize the possibilities, existing systems in order to protest against certain thing. Hence, one may argue that social movements compete for resources. Within a broader movement, industry and struggle for resources against the demands of the public, private, and third sectors. So this resource movement theory basically argue for the resources being pumped into society and the way people are using those resources in order to mobilize themselves. But there has been certain shift in resource mobilization theory of late. They have started arguing that the importance of indigenous organization is important. Indigenous organization they have gained strength because of the processes and resources being available. Literacy rate has increased. There is a rise of elites among the tribals, right? Among the impoverished masses also, they could also understand. Media is also showing them how the things are being, happening. So obviously, there is cognitive liberation. People are aware of the fact that they are being deprived, they are being marginalized. Then there is the rise of contentious politics. There are opposition parties who would come and say, well, you are exploited, you are marginalized. So this contentious politics probably allow a space to people to in fact articulate their grievances. So there are movement entrepreneurs. There are people who work like businessmen and mobilize movements, and they effectively do it. They give name, they use the terminology. Many of the terminologies being used in social movement are unique, right? And obviously they construct identity. So this construction of identity through communication and cultural dispositions is one of the major shift in resource mobilization theory. Let me now talk about the second most important theory, that is identity perspective. Identity perspective emerged against the backdrop of proliferation of preponderant labor movements, development of industrial democracies, Fabian socialism, and welfare state in the UK and other countries. On the other hand, mobilization of nationalist feeling in countries like Germany, right? So there is certain developments of movements taking place in certain parts. On the other hand, there is the growth of nationalism and identity. Due to that context, people started stressing too much on identity. In fact, we have discussed in the module on ethnic identity movements that in contemporary world, identities have proliferated more in the West. It was earlier argued that identity movements are seen only in the East, but now after the breakdown of Soviet Union and Germany and so on and so forth, there is identity movements even in the so-called UK and USA. So a kind of feeling in Western Europe and other parts of the world have allowed the social scientists to argue for a new kind of social movement which are relying on identity as the basic purpose. Now, they are called new social movements. I have already told you about the distinction between new and old social movements, although these distinctions will be discussed in detail in some other module. But in brief, old social movements were basically class movement. They are stressing on structural issues. The participants are restricted. Here, in the new social movements, you get people from different classes, from segments. For instance, gender movement, environmental movement. You feel that you belong to a particular segment, you belong to a particular group. So you are either participating in gender movement or you are participating in environmental movement. Many of the ethnic movements in the east or west, blacks, whites, so and so forth, they are in fact they stress on consciousness and collective identity of a particular group. A particular group feels that they are exploited and they start mobilizing themselves based on that kind of identity. Often they use the argument of relative deprivation, but they they develop a particular identity, and stressing those identities are more important for those movements to survive. Obviously, subjectivity and idealism are essential elements of social movements, of these movements, and subjectivity refers to the subject in its totality. It concerns with a drastic change in the fabric of social life that takes place with a new movement. When a new movement is born, I think I am a subject and I am attached to that. The social movements grow around relationships of new social identity that are voluntarily conceived to empower members in defense of this identity. It should also be noted that those who are stressing on identity, they also believe in the fluidity of identity. The fluid-led characters, because often I think I am a Bengali. On the other hand, I could be a non-Marxist. On the other hand, I could be a person from Bardhaman. On the other hand, I could be a sociologist. So I have different identities. But these identities won't prevent me to join a gender movement or support an environmental movement or support the Maoist movement. So this fluidity of identities have given rise to fuzzy membership in a network society. That means we are members of different movements. That is the reality. Continuous changes in social life has taken place in particularly globalized world. So we need to take account to the way globalization and social movements are in fact hampering or influencing day-to-day activity. There is a proliferation of global movements, for instance, environmental movement, human rights movement, a vision of another world, and the demand for recognition of cultural identities. These are all new. So conflict is getting institutionalized gradually. One would get the idea that we now live in a movement society because there is movement everywhere, right? So this plurality of social movements often are argued to counter the objectives of social movement. So there is the rise of what is called social anti-movements. They use inverted image of social movement. They often say there is a chaos here and there. What is the point in going for movement? So they argue for abstract entity, for homogeneity, and instead of building relationships, they try to destroy these movements and fight against them. So there is a growth of social anti-movements which in fact try to destroy the very foundation of social movements. Now in contemporary society, I will be ending this discourse on social movements with the way contemporary society is basically dealing with the social movement. You would all agree with me that in the wake of globalization and the emerging interplay of several new forces, a large part of society is undergoing profound process of socio-cultural decontextualization. These phenomena have generated composite process of vertical and horizontal social mobility. New forms of social conflicts have arisen. There is concurrent radicalization and institutionalized social mobilization. So the relationship between the state and social movements have acquired a new dimension today. In the emerging scenario, while on the one hand there have been processes of co-option of collective mobilization by the state and a decline of culture of collective protest, there have also been resurgence of people's protest at the grassroots, which are looking for new mediums of expressions and societal recognition. rise of new types of contradictions can't be explained simply by contraposing one organizing principle of collective mobilization over the other. For instance, we cannot say that it is fight between subjectivity versus objectivity, solidarity versus fluidity, structure versus process, singularity versus plurality, and social versus antisocial. Rather, in view of resilience and resurgence of these conflicts and collective mobilization and their interface with emerging patterns of social mobility, these may be explained by understanding the broad process of socio-economic transitions of the society and by combining many of the organizing principles of social movement together. I believe in this module you have become aware of the way we have been discussing the basic issues of social movement. I would request all of you to go through the remaining modules to make you aware of the detailed issues and particular social movements which are discussed in each of a particular movement. Thank you very much.